Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Richard.
And we got Richard here as well. Fantastic to see you here with us. A good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening to you, obviously, depending on where you are in the world. And in today's eSellerCafe Roundup, we're going to be looking at the news stories which may affect you, which have happened over the past week. So, Richard, what's been going on in the world of e-commerce for over the last 7 days?
We had no story on Amazon for a week.
For a week?
How about that?
I'm sure
next week. And I did check this morning just to see if they actually had released anything, and they did, but it was all stuff that really had more to do with their video offerings and other things. So nothing that really would impact an e-commerce seller. So yeah, it was kind of like an Amazon free week. But as a little sneak preview, if you're with us today, there will be an Amazon-based story. It's virtually in the can, virtually written, probably be posted within the hour after we're done. So that'll be Amazon-centric for us to talk about next week. So the big news, big company this year, or this last week, was UPS in the news. Two bits of pieces of information that they came out with. Number one, they purchased an Irish company called Nightline.
Mm-hmm.
And Nightline is, a regional carrier, 1 million people, apparently the largest carrier in Ireland. Not really grand news of in it's by itself, and I think you have to look a little bit beyond that. And one of the areas, or two of the areas I looked at are, number one, Brexit, because with Brexit, there's a possibility some American companies may prefer to be in Ireland. So obviously, UPS being an American company, it makes a lot of sense for them to have a European EU-based headquarters in an English-speaking country. There's already quite a bit of that going on with Ireland because of favorable taxation of subsidiaries in Ireland. So that's number one. Number two, story for e-commerce, that is infrastructure in Europe. In 2014, UPS announced they were going to spend upwards of $2 billion to improve the infrastructure for delivering in Europe by 2020. Mm-hmm. That's significant money. After they announced that in 2016, well, actually a year and a half later, FedEx went out and bought TNT, which obviously had already a foothold in Europe. So clearly the European market is an important growth market for the US logistics companies. And there's a reason for that when you look at trade dollars. Typically in the United States, when we talk about who are big trade partners, we say Canada's number one, Mexico's number two. In the way of exports, that is, obviously China's number one in the way of imports. But when you look at then it's all the other various other countries, the UK, Germany, blah, blah, so on and so forth. But when you look at the EU as a market, as one market, it actually now for the first time surpasses Canada. That happened just a few months ago. So the EU, with a 300 some odd million population, Canada has 40 or 50 million off the top of my head, has a lot of growth potential. And even so, each individual country still has its own taxation and border controls and so on and so forth when it comes to imports. What you got to look at is infrastructure. What if, and this is the big what if, FedEx and UPS start offering fulfillment services? Let's face it, DHL is already doing some of that, where they bring in things from Asia in bulk, and then it gets separated into smaller packages and shipped within Europe. So they're already offering that service. So clearly, in my mind, UPS and FedEx are working toward that. Now, DHL is not a big, even so, we started here in the US, but they're not really a major factor when it comes to the US. As a matter of fact, they tried ground operations one time and it just didn't work. So FedEx and UPS are the two main companies, and it makes sense for them down the road to offer fulfillment in Europe, because once the product is in Europe, you don't have the border problems anymore. You don't have to worry about 26 different jurisdictions of importation, because everything now, or 27 after Brexit, everything will run within within the EU. So I think that is where all of this is going. And then when you look at the actual numbers and say, well, if we can trade, the same amount of dollars with 1/4 of the population of Canada, or 1/5 the population of Canada, why can't we trade with that much in Europe? And there's another interesting factor here. Is now in 2008, when you look at the numbers, and I spend a little time looking at it, and I might write a blog article about this, but anyways, when you look at the numbers, in 2008, when the US dollar went into the toilet because of the doom and gloom in the global markets, US products became cheap. So a lot of Europeans started buying products here in Europe, in the United States, because it made sense financially. Even products that might be Chinese or Japanese products were still cheaper to buy from the US than it would be to buy domestically in Europe at the time. But now when you look at it today, where the US dollar is strong and the euro is still weak because of some uncertainties. Now with the French elections behind us, that's probably going to, at least that one is gone, but Brexit's still there, and there's other issues in other countries, let's face it. I mean, the whole southern part of Europe is still not out of the woods. So when you look at all of that, the US exports have still grown despite the US dollar being strong. So clearly there is a market, and clearly UPS and FedEx are looking to exploit that market. And US-based sellers should really be looking at what will they be offering here in the next few years, because I see fulfillment coming down the pike very, very quickly.
Yeah, again, from being on this side of the pond, so being based in Europe, is that we have the potential. If you think back, for me, looking across the United States, you have how many states and how many different sales tax laws? And then you look at Europe and then you go, well, is that not like half of the challenges? But actually, it's only one challenge, because you need to get it into one European country and cope with that one import, potentially. And then it can get distributed into each country. So, yeah. And again, the other thing is that the challenge here is the couriers are the challenge for you, is not being able to do it yourself. You need a third party like UPS to be able to do it for you, which then opens up Spain, Italy, France, United Kingdom, Germany, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. And that's, I think the US sellers have to start looking at the EU as a single country market very shortly. And I think these, like you said, the logistics companies, the couriers, are going to be the key to that. And of course, Amazon will take advantage of this too. And I also believe Amazon has these couriers will benefit from Amazon a little bit as well, because the Christmas season in the United States, Amazon heavily relies on FedEx and UPS to deliver packages. So they're not, they already know they got a built-in customer, so to speak, that'll help them get going, so.
Okay, so that was UPS investing into Europe by buying an Irish-based company called Nightline Logistics. The other story which you've got here, Richard, is to do with improving packaging for online sellers. Can you explain more?
UPS is they've always had this logistics area, or whatever they want to call it, where they looked at packaging, and mostly what had to do with how strong is the packaging. But UPS traditionally has been, and probably still is today, a B2B logistics company. They take packages from warehouses and send them to smaller retailers. So that's been their bread and butter business. But over the last few years, they've seen a huge shift into B2C with the e-commerce growth, and that's why they expanded into Saturday delivery. That's going to get rolled out through most of the United States by Christmas time. Saturday delivery, not a charged Saturday delivery, which it was before was $10 or $15 and had to be air shipment on top of that, but it's going to be a free ground Saturday delivery. So that was step one for B2C, and obviously with that come other challenges, because you now have more stops for the courier, so they need to do things like rerouting. But then also comes sorting. In the past, you'd have maybe sorting was easier. You know, the package was a big package, it was a bunch of small packages inside the package. Well, I know what are those Russian dolls called, babushka dolls or something, you know, where you take one out and there's another doll inside. Well, it's kind of like when you get a package sometimes delivered, you feel like that's what you're doing, you know, big package, another package, another package. And so that's where the sealed air deal comes into place. Trying to look at packaging. How can we make it better, lighter, take less space, and that will then save you volumetric pricing for shipping. It'll save you weight pricing for shipping. And most importantly, you know, let's face it, most consumers don't have big trash dumpsters in the back of their house. So, you know, reduce the amount of trash that a shipment generates, which is eco-friendly, but also a lot easier for consumers to handle, because the package is the very first thing a consumer sees. You know, that is the first impression. And how many of you you see a package on the front door and you're like, uh-oh, look at this thing. You know, I had something delivered to me a couple of months ago from Macy's, which was dishes. I could tell already from the outside package that half the dishes inside were destroyed, you know.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. I typically get a couple of deliveries here every week from typically Royal Mail, and then a whole variety of different couriers as well. And you just know, sometimes you just look at the box and you know that's been trod on, it's been abused on the way through. But yeah, so I'd see the point. On one hand, better quality packaging materials, better for the environment. But then ultimately, if the product or products which turn up and they get destroyed during transit, then that's caused more waste than would it have done by cheapening down or altering the actual packaging materials themselves. And the frustration and the customer support issues which come with that as well. Just seeing it from both sides of the fences, not only as a consumer, but also as a business, is that the items which go wrong in like the delivery process, they cause an awful lot more headache than what a successful delivery would normally dictate, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Totally, because you don't want to send out the same, even if you get paid for by insurance, the hassle, the time. I mean, every time I've done an insurance claim, it's like it takes me an hour to do it, you know. And I'm at the point where I have to be honest, if it's less than $100, it's just easier for me to ship out a new thing and they'd be done with it. Don't even do the claim. So
exactly. Anyway. Now, Richard, you got, is it Signifyd secures 56 million for e-commerce fraud protection? Now, but before you just answer that one, they charge fees of around about 1% of the sale to cover all fraud. Is that not expensive? Well, I don't. Obviously, it's going to be category based, like the type and range of products which you sell, but that's got to be a big compelling argument. 1% of all sales for fraud protection?
Well, I think there's a couple things here. I think that's their retail price point on their website. Let's start with that. You know, they have the demand 4%, ongoing 1%, and then there's that enterprise, column where call us. You know, so I think that if you sell a lot, you probably want to call them. You know, because that's 1% would make. Would get very expensive. Now it all depends on how much you you ship, what type of products you ship, where you ship. The company's got this $56 million in additional funding because they have grown very rapidly, and have grown rapidly with major retailers. So clearly they're not giving those retailers, not charging them 1%, they're charging less than that. But they have, what it does do, it provides a fixed price for your fraud. So whatever percentage you might be able to negotiate with them, that my fraud costs are going to be that, period, end of story. If I have a problem with fraud, I don't have to sit there and mess around with the credit cards, go back and forth, all the time that you waste doing all of that. You fill out one claims form, 48 hours later, you got your money. That's it. So there's something to be said about that. Even at 1%, if you're selling internationally, some people have, obviously there's countries where fraud is a higher problem. Now they're going to be using artificial intelligence to make decisions. They are going to tell you at times, no, don't ship that. And there have been services like that before that offer these type of things, but in the end, they didn't really insure anything. They just gave you like cryptic, dots like red, yellow, green, or something like that, or some percentage off or scale, and you still end up having to make your own decision.
Yeah.
So with Signifyd, it's go or no go. It's simple as can be. And if it's go, if they told you to ship it, for it. And if it's $1,000 item and a buyer makes a complaint about it not being his credit card or a fraudulent purchase, not your problem, because Signifyd will pay you $1,000. So and you don't have to mess around with all the problems of having to combat that with the credit card companies. I assume PayPal is involved in this. Some of the people that are running this company are ex-PayPal employees. So, so I would say there's a value there, but it's going to have to depend on what you sell and what your products are worth.
Yeah. So by the way, there are links to all of the topics which we've covered here today. They're down underneath in the video description. So if any of these take a fancy, the links are there, and more details are in the actual articles themselves. So moving on, MailChimp. I've got some updates.
Yeah, it's kind of like a spring sell update.
I know. I've been here reading the article myself. It looks, the big one really is the customized URL, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So it's kind of cool that you finally can customize your URL, especially if you have a paid plan where you can put your domain name finally in the URL. So it's not this cryptic long thing with numbers and stuff. Now, if you're on a free plan, they do allow you to do some customization, but you still have the cryptic initial, I guess, slug or whatever. But after that, the title of whatever your email is can now be, the title of your email, or you can change it to something else, kind of like in how you would do it in some content management systems like WordPress, where you have a title of a story and then you can change the slug to say something different. So that's a really cool feature. The other new feature they added is versioning, because you can upload images and files to the cloud or their cloud, and if you make adjustments to it, they keep the old versions available, so you're not overriding your old versions.
Nice touch.
So that's good. That's a nice touch. And how much that really costs them to do? Probably not a whole lot. So it's easy to implement. They are also now able to automatically bring in product images from various platforms that they with the API. So you don't have to move stuff around if you're using Magento or BigCommerce or Shopify. They just grab the image and there it is. It's right in your in their cloud now. Which now, if you make edits to that image, it doesn't affect the image on your website. It only affects what you will then use for your email campaign. So that's very important. So it's a one-way API. It's a pull. There's not a push there when you make an edit. Let's see. I have to memorize these. So double check. Okay. Then the Giphy. Giphy, which is that animated characters or something else, like a sale.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some people use them. I think they can be effective. I don't know. I get an email that starts out that way. I always find it a bit gimmicky, but maybe it does work for people. Then they have automation now available for free accounts. A lot of the automation features before were hidden behind the paid wall.
Yeah, and again, with MailChimp, that was the reason why we moved to a paid subscription. Well, there's two reasons: number of subscribers, and number two, I wanted the automation tools as well. So it's nice to see that they've been included them in the free levels as well.
Yeah, and I think hopefully what they finally saw is that by including the free, people will use them. As people use the automation, it might improve the number of, or increase the number of email addresses, or that they will store. Obviously, once they hit that magic 2,000, oh yeah, now we're going to charge you for it. So that it made sense. I kind of didn't have it in before. And then the last bit, they added templates some advanced, some updates to how to do templates and stuff. They really were not particularly they actually did, but it's supposed to make it a little easier to do templates, a little more step by step.
Richard, I found their template editor really straightforward in the first place, so they made it even easier. That's happy days, because it was pretty straightforward before. And I'm a MailChimp user. I use it. We also use Infusionsoft as well, but it's horses for courses. MailChimp is fantastic, and again, it's free for, what is it, 2,000 subscribers or less, or something like that. So extremely affordable for free.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any questions yet before we go on to the next one?
Yeah, and by the way, those of you which are watching this, we are recording this live. And do note that we do have varying video qualities throughout this, because one of us is based in the United Kingdom, that's myself, and Richard, you're based in probably very sunny Florida, aren't you?
Yeah, and I actually have the shades down.
It's funny, I've got the same here. Summer is here in the United Kingdom today, and I've got the blinds down. Otherwise, it would be blindingly bright in here. So
that's my problem, is I have the window on my right side, so I end up with this glaring sun coming in from the right, you know. And I was like, okay, I started working on improving the studio quality a little bit.
I know. I can tell your lighting is more than adequate, and I can tell you've got a big bright light up there, and it makes someone's forehead shine up. Right, let's move on very, very quickly, which is that, Richard, there's been a bit of a shake-up in Etsy. Has there been some going on there? What's happened to cause that?
Yeah, a lot of that going on, apparently. Well, let me preface this a little bit, that 10 days ago on Friday, I said, well, last week there would be some additional earnings reports coming out. And quite frankly, I looked at most of them, like Facebook and others, so like, okay, met expectations. How many times can you say the same thing about the same company? So I didn't even write a post about it. But the only one that was really of interest was Etsy, because we've had some positive stories about Etsy recently. We talked about how they improved their payment systems, how they're now going to allow guest checkout. These are all stories that are on eSellerCafe.com. But then they come out and say, well, the CEO has decided to, or is resigned. The CTO, so the chief operating officer, as well as the chief technical officer, both were, I would say, just booted. You know, yeah, they resigned, but they were booted. And who booted them? Well, there's an activist investor involved in this, in Etsy, and let me briefly explain a little bit what that means. Activist investors is basically a hedge fund that takes an interest in a company. And if you remember back a few years when Carl Icahn bought shares in eBay and said, look, eBay needs to be separated from PayPal. The two together are not good. They need to be separate companies. And eBay said, no, we need to stay, we're stronger together, we need to do this and that. And there was this big fight going on. And in the end, you know, Icahn sold his stake because eBay, as a company with all its other institutional investors, which are mostly like insurance companies, mutual funds, etc., was strong enough to just say to Icahn, no, we want to keep it that way. Funny thing, 6 months later, or whatever it was, they announced they're going to split. So you could make the argument that, you know, Carl Icahn basically was right. Okay. So in this particular case, Black and White Capital is saying this company is completely underperforming. Yeah, yes, you've made some improvements, but really, what's your biggest problem? Search. You haven't improved anything on it. You've done some things on eco-friendliness, and you've done some other things that you pay your employees better. That's all nice, okay? But that doesn't make money, and the finances show that. The company was barely scraping by. Now this quarter it went in the red again, so it was time to change, and that's maybe good for sellers, because if this hedge fund really pushes for this change, and the person that is now the CEO of Etsy is probably somebody that they said, yeah, this guy knows how to do this. We're going to see some more changes in Etsy that should help sellers. Now, on the short term, anytime you have here hedge fund, activist investor, people get frightened. And there's going to be some sellers like, oh, you know, I'm with Etsy because there was, it was so community friendly, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? We all know we're all in this business to make money at the end of the day. And so if they can improve the company, great. Now, there's a second option here because they came out flat out said, look, the company right now trades under $12 as of this morning per share. They said the company's worth $15 if somebody wants to buy it, outright buy it, whether it's private equity, Walmart, somebody, $15 is a good number for it, But they believe in the long term it's worth 30. So they're already dangling out the idea, hey, somebody want to buy this thing? We'll sign off on 15. I guarantee you that they have other institutional investors on board with them that already said 15 will be a great number. We'll be happy to buy it at that number because they only own 2%. And usually when you have an activist investor like that out there, they already have talked to other major investors, institutional investors in the company. They have an idea of what others are willing to take. The individual stockholder that owns 100 stocks doesn't matter in this conversation.
So, Richard, what you're basically saying is that Etsy is like the one to watch because right now it's like the most uncertain one of marketplaces out there. And it's going to be the wild card. And again, it's really exciting for us to be having this conversation because we're having this in May. There's a lot of things which can go on from the 5th month to the 12th month of the year. So Etsy, one to watch over the next couple of months because CEO, CTO out the door, active investor in the background, kicking stuff around, making hints that $15 for the share price would be good. It thinks that it might be worth 30 in 2 to 3 years time. So that's obviously going to get the investors, external people go, really? That's double? That's
eBay. eBay was $30 a stock, So I think I believe that they are angling for a Walmart buy or somebody like that. But if that doesn't happen, then they're clearly the search and all these other things, categorization is the other one that they said was horrendous. That's the word they actually used. Search and categorization are horrendous. Think about that.
No, Richard, this is great because what they've been and done is put their finger on 2 issues. They've said search is horrific and categorization is horrendous. Okay, is that those 2 things basically get fixed. So if the new CTO comes in and basically fixes those 2 issues, well, he's a golden boy for the next couple of months, and then to the outside world, it looks even better. So.
Yeah, and I think Etsy, as you said, is the one to watch, and with all the other news that we've had recently with Etsy's improvements and 6-bit software adding Etsy to its listing tool, I think that if you're in the business of e-commerce and selling those type of products and you're not selling on Etsy, I think you really need to look today and see what can I do there, because it is a marketplace. Yes, it's a niche marketplace, but you have the niche buyers there that might be looking for products that you sell that are handmade or custom made. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. On that note, it is time for us to wrap up. I am just going to quickly reiterate the topics which we've been and covered here today. And remember, if you've got any questions or comments about anything which we have been and covered, you can let us know underneath this video here on YouTube, or of course on any of the articles over on eSellerCafe.com. Now, there is links to all of these articles in the video description for you. So quick rundown. UPS. And we were having that discussion about Europe being as big as Canada. So if you're based in the United States, Europe, and I can tell you as being still a European, believe it or not, and I'm based in the United Kingdom, is that it's quite a large number of people. And we do like to buy a lot of stuff online. And anyway, that was the first topic, was about UPS and Europe. Second one, UPS again with packaging, and again there's a link to that one in the video description for you. Signifyd secures 56 million USD for e-commerce fraud protection. Again, look into more details for that one. That could be curious for you and your business. MailChimp, big personal fan of MailChimp, really straightforward to tools. If you're looking for something to start off your email marketing part for your business, then MailChimp is pretty much a no-brainer for you to use all the tools, and it just got an awful lot better for both free users and also paid users as well. In fact, what I'm going to personally be doing after we finish this live session, I'm going to go over to the MailChimp and see what I can do about customized URL for a couple of my businesses. So yes, happy days on that one. And the last topic, and of course, Richard's full editorial on this one is there's a link to that in the video description for you. Etsy, the one to watch over the next couple of months. It is the little bit of a, I wanted to say rude boy, but that's the wrong, it's the wild card. What's going to happen with Etsy now? If there's been a big shakeup, they've put their fingers on, said, fix these two things. What's going to happen there? Is anybody going to buy it? I don't know. Do you know? Let us know.
Exactly. And again, just in about an hour, so there'll be interesting article about Amazon, very relevant to e-commerce sellers. Let me just say it has to do with the echo.
Ah, very curious. Wonder if they finally got around. And again, I haven't even got an idea on this one, so I'm looking forward to reading this one myself. So that could be the curious one, because the echo device into third-party merchants, that's going to be big for us as e-commerce business owners. Very curious. So yeah, you was there smiling. So right, on that note, from myself, Matt, and of course Richard as well, thank you very much for joining us. This was recorded live, and it is a summary of the news articles which we feel would impact you as e-commerce business owners over the past 7 days. We hold these every Monday at 4 p.m. British Standard Time, and I need to get my number to get the times right, which is on the other tab. Which annoyingly I can't get at because it's hidden in there. So it's 4 p.m. British Standard Time, 11 a.m. EDT, 8 a.m. PDT, or if you're in Europe, 5 p.m. CET. So on that note, from myself, Matt, and of course,
Richard, me.
Richard.
You guys have a great day. We'll see you next Monday.
See you next Monday. Cheerios.